Hello, everybody. Welcome to All Villa, No Filler, a podcast all about Aston Villa, the world's greatest football team. Thank you to anyone who tunes into this live. I will put this out on audio as well. I just thought I'd do this because we haven't really done a lot on kind of what's going on with Aston Villa transfer rumours so much recently. So I thought I'd do this just because there's so much noise around Emi Martinez at the moment, particularly from the Argentinian media, that it's very difficult to think something isn't going on with Emi Martinez right now. The fact of the matter is, I think with Villa, we have high wages to turnover, right? I think maybe the highest in the Premier League itself. In the 23-24 season, the season we were in the Conference League, according to The Athletic, it was at 91%. Now, I would think that has gone lower. I have no insight to tell me whether that's true or not, but you would think it's gone lower just because in the last year, Aston Villa's revenues through the Champions League, how far we got in that, through new sponsorships, through Botano, various different commercial deals that Villa have probably done, various other ways they've made money. That Villa revenues wise will hopefully be somewhere close to around 400 million, probably maybe maybe under that, but we'll probably only know when the Deloitte spreadsheet comes out, the Deloitte League comes out a bit later. So, but the assumption is that Aston Villa's revenues will be at a pretty healthy looking for the 24-25 season. But what you've got to take into account for that as well, though, is that Aston Villa's players, there's probably a fair few of them who may have it in their contracts that if Aston Villa get into the Champions League, they get pay rises, they get bumps if they, I don't know, keep clean sheets, for instance. And you have to think that Emi Martinez probably is Aston Villa's highest paid player because he's a World Cup winner. He was a crucial part of why Argentina won the Copa America twice. He won the World Cup once. He's possibly our most globally famous player. So Emi Martinez, and then of course, obviously, he's won the Yashin Award. Was it twice in a row? He's been the best goalkeeper in the world according to FIFA, 2 years in a row. So Emi Martinez, really, if you're picking up awards like that, winning trophies the way he's won them, he should be on 200 or more a week. Can Villa afford that? Well, I think if Villa were in the Champions League regularly, yes, that's something Villa could probably afford because it would mean revenues keep going up and they can hold on to players like Martinez. But we're not in the Champions League. I think this summer does feel a little bit like we are in a kind of static mode, quite similar to what Newcastle were a year ago. Now, the difference with Newcastle is that they obviously didn't make Europe at all last year, whereas we are in the Europa League. So, hopefully we'll go far in it. You'd think we would go a decent way into it, and hopefully then, we can. The revenues will be decent enough that it's not like a traumatic hit to our accounts. But the fact we're not in the Champions League probably does, and the fact that Aston Villa have to get their SCR sorted, it has to be down to 70% soonish. I mean, we've just had a big fine from UEFA as well for going over on their financial rules. So Villa are going to have to find a way to reduce their wages. And if I were using my logic, who do I think are Villa's highest paid players? It has to be Emi Martinez. It has to be. For the awards he's won, he just has to be. That's what he's worth. And I'm sure that were he to move to somewhere like, I don't know, like Saudi or maybe even a Man United, he could probably get a pay bump of another 100k a week at United and probably another 200k, 300k in Saudi Arabia. That's just the way it is. So, overnight there's been a fair amount of noise coming out of Argentina about Emi Martinez and Manchester United. Look, I would rather not lose Emi Martinez. I think he's he's the world's number one. We've been waiting years and years and years and years for a goalkeeper of this stature to come into Villa. When a ball comes into the area, particularly last season, you just feel like it's all right because Emi Martinez is going to just catch it, and he does. Rarely makes mistakes. You could say that there's been a few more this season than there have been in the past. On the ball, he's very, very good. Very underrated on the ball as well, I think, actually. Just a fantastic goalkeeper. And it surprises me there isn't actually more interest in him. But, possibly the fact that he's, 32 now, will want a big pay bump. Maybe there's just not enough clubs out there who want to pay it. Maybe not pay what Aston Villa are going to ask for him. So, yeah, but I think it's worth clarifying. So Matt Mayer from the Express Star up in the Midlands, super journalist. He really is really someone worth following. I think if you're on Twitter or anything like that, he's a really top journalist. He said there was noise coming out of Argentina that said that there was a 21 million or 22 million pound release clause in Emi's contract. That would be very surprising to me if that was true. But Matt Mayer has said in more high-profile news, he is told that overnight reports from Argentina claiming Emi Martinez has a 22 million pound release clause are not true. Speculation around his future continues to swirl, but for now, it's as you were, as Liam Gallagher would say, as you were. So, yes, I think if I were to bet, I would say that Emi Martinez is going to go. Villa need to lose someone's wages. It's probably going to be him, or who I think the other top paid player probably is, Ollie Watkins. It just sucks the way the financial rules are, but it is what it is. And there's going to be a lot of Villa fans who probably hear this and say, stop trying to sell players, stop being negative about things. It's not negativity, it's just realism. Like, Villa have to get down their SCR down to 70%, and we're not in the Champions League. So we're going to have to lose some big wages somewhere, you would think. Now, hopefully, where the wages would go is obviously Coutinho's out the door. Dendoncker, reports say, is on 90k a week. I mean, it's just a shocking deal, of which there were many in the late Purslow era. Diego Carlos, another player, big wages, he's gone. John Duran probably wasn't on the biggest wages, but he's gone as well. Big fee came in for him. But moving on Dendoncker, moving on Coutinho, Robin Olsen as well, probably on a hefty chunk, Swedish international. He was on a hefty chunk, he's gone. Anyone else that sort of could be on a bit decent whack? You'd think maybe that, Tyrone Mings has signed a new contract. He may have taken a bit of a pay cut to stay at Villa. The other one as well, Luca Dean. Reports say that he's on 120k a week. Again, I love Luca Dean. I think he's been a brilliant player for Villa, a really solid player for Villa, and he really, he's taken to the culture of the club really well. He's been part of the furniture now. But you do have to think that 120 grand a week at that time when Villa's revenues weren't particularly great, or we weren't exactly doing a lot to get them up. Spending that amount of money on a fullback who isn't, world class, strikes me as quite reckless. It's paid off now. We did get in the Champions League, but still, I think that's a lot. That's a lot. People could argue, to get better, you have to pay more. So obviously, you do, but I just think that for the caliber that Dean is, I think he's been an excellent player for Villa, as I say. But I think putting him on those wages at the time we put him on them, that Purslow-Gerrard moment of madness, it just I don't think it was a particularly wise thing to do. It's only now, since Purslow left, and in the last 2 years, that Villa's revenues have gone up. Now, Champions League obviously is a major factor in that. But, that Villa have been doing things off the pitch to get the revenues up. Now, ticket prices, to me, I'm never going to support ticket prices going up. I'm just not. I don't think it's necessary. But by the same token, what Villa have done, they've increased their hospitality offerings at Villa Park, whatever people think of that. Patano sponsorship, Adidas, deal. The warehouse coming in, which would be a source of revenue, year round, hopefully. The new club shop, which is super. The new club shop going in the Bullring in Birmingham, getting Aston Villa's presence in airports, in different parts of the world, getting us in JD Sports in places like London, I walk into a JD Sports down here and I'll see a Villa shirt now, which never used to be the case. All these things, they do add up. And, there's probably other sponsorship deals that have gone through as well. So, yes, Champions League was the main factor in Villa's revenues going up. But at the same time, Villa have been making moves in the last 2 years to up those revenues off the pitch, kind of regardless of what people think of Chris Eck, right? Yes, there's just certain things I wish he'd done a lot more diplomatically, and I wish the ticket prices had gone up. But in the end, it's not. It's the owners. That's who it was. That's where that came from, really. So they signed off on it. So there you go. I mean, please God, ticket prices go down this season for the Europa League, but unfortunately, it's a football-wide issue. Ticket prices going up, and I think in the end, football will eat itself, and it'll price out too many fans. It already is doing that with keeping it behind subscription paywalls. And who in the end is going to be the so-called legacy fan of the future? The answer is I don't know. So there's that. But yes, on the transfer front, Emi Martinez is getting linked away to Manchester United. Garnacho is a name that's getting linked to Villa. Obviously, there's a picture of him in Marcus Rashford's Aston Villa shirt. Garnacho would be an interesting one, I think. Interesting player. He's very talented. He is. Is there an attitude issue? Yeah, you could argue that, being vocal about not playing in the Europa League final was probably not his finest moment. You can kind of understand his frustration, but it is something you should probably just keep behind closed doors and go to the manager and say it to him rather than going to the press or saying it publicly, I guess. But then at the same time, people would have said the same about Marcus Rashford, but Rashford at Aston Villa, by all accounts, went well. So Garnacho as well, you'd think, we're at a year-long loan. For a player of his potential quality, the potential level he could get to, it wouldn't be the worst deal in the world, but that is just a rumor. So, I don't want to give too much credence to it. Now, what has been happening? Enzo Barrenechea, according to Jacob Ramsey, the Athletic, he's left for Benfica for 15 million euros, roughly 13 million pounds, 30% sell-on fee. 30% is very, very high. Wow, that can't really record. There must be deals that have had that in it, but I can't remember a 30% one. That's impressive. Now, the Athletic reported that we bought Barrenechea for roughly £9 million last year. So that's about a £4 million profit on a player whose only game at Villa was a pre-season knock-around at Warsaw. He might have played a couple of games in the US last year as well. But yeah, he's never played a competitive game for the Villa. So, does it feel a bit low, 30 million, arguably? But then he's 24? He's getting 25. He should be approaching his peak years now. His injuries have sort of held him back. He's been on loan. He's not really been too settled. I would like to have seen him at Villa for a year just to see what he's about in the Premier League, see what, could he be a good backup for Yuri Tielemans? But Villa have to do what they have to do. And so, 30% sell on. If he goes on to Benfica, turns out to be a brilliant player for 2 years, the age of 26, 27, he might move on to a Bayern Munich or a Dortmund or someone for £35 million, and we've got a 30% sell on fee. So it's not too bad, is it? And, who knows, maybe he goes even for just 5 million or 10 million in a few years. And if it's 30%, 3 million, that's an extra 3 million in. So then the profit goes from 4 million to 7 million. So for a player who barely ever played for Villa, never played for Villa, not too bad, is it? Otherwise, Kostas Nedeljkovic, he's gone to RB Leipzig. They chose not to take his buy option, which they had, buy option of £9 million, but they have taken him back on loan for a year. Now, he did well. He did very well at RB Leipzig because he managed to get Lucero Gertruida, a Dutch international, out of the team. Now, I vocally was very, very pro Nedeljkovic a year ago when I saw him in pre-season, when I saw him in a couple of competitive games for Aston Villa. I really thought you could see a player there who in 3 or 4 years, with his pace and directness, will be able to bomb on down that wing. And there were attributes to his game that sort of reminded me of Gareth Bale, just in that sort of fast, direct nature that he had, that he could really run past players and get to the byline and do things in the attacking third. I'm not saying he's going to be as great a player as Gareth Bale is. There's very few in history who will ever be as good as Gareth Bale was. But I do think Nedeljkovic looks like a player in 2 and 3 years' time is going to be one we look at and go, bloody hell, I can't. He played for Villa. Well, now he's at bloody Bayern Munich. But in Emery's defence, in Villa's defence, they can't wait. And if they're seeing him every day in training and think he's just not ready, or maybe he struggles to take on instructions, maybe there's a language barrier, you just don't know. That's something that Villa can't really afford to do because, one mistake in a game can cost you Champions League football at the end of a season. And so you do understand why a team that like Villa in the position we're in, it's difficult to take too much chances on youth players. Andres Garcia's coming now. What we've seen of him, he looks a very handy player, particularly when he gets to the final third. Defensively, hopefully he'll improve in time. He looked all right. But with Nedeljkovic, if he goes and smashes it now at RB Leipzig, next season we could have sold him for 9 million now. They chose not to pay it. In a year's time, if he's brilliant at Leipzig, who's to say that there won't be other teams sniffing around and wanting to pay 25 million for him? And maybe Villa ourselves go, we're going to hold on to him. But we'll see. We'll see there. I am going to keep an eye on him in the Bundesliga next season because, I just think there's something there with that guy. Otherwise, as well, there have been reports in the last few days that from the Telegraph, who are very well connected with Villa. A few of their journalists, John Percy's there, I think Matt Law maybe. The Telegraph reported that Nottingham Forest have made Jacob Ramsey a priority target. If Aston Villa need to look at PSR for, when it comes around to June 30th next year, and already want to eat into that, well then, Ramsey going is pure profit, isn't he? Which is just, I just can't believe I have to talk about these things, being a football fan. But yes, he is pure profit. But that said, if he were to go, you then lose in a homegrown player for the Europa League. So they could potentially put 1 or 2 academy players in there, maybe, and that would fill the gap. But they might not really ever play. But with Ramsey, what do you think? I'd be interested to know what you think. I would rather, again, like Emi Martinez and Ollie Watkins, I would rather not see him go. I think the case you could make is that since his injury 2 years ago, has he kicked on really? Because I think he was really peaking when he got that injury. He looked like a player who's about to just kick on and get to another level. I think that year out probably has delayed him, and he's also not starting a lot at Villa now. His games are coming sort of in bits and pieces. Although that is the nature of football now, just the volume of games, players are now more. It is 60 minutes, 70-minute players, half an hour players, and they switch around. But Ramsey, you could say he hasn't really kicked on. But then again, he's one of our own. It's great to have one of your own there. He is an excellent player, and I think he has a higher ceiling than what he's currently shown, and maybe a run of matches where he can start would lead him to get to the level that it looked like he was heading towards 2 years ago. But, were Villa to sell and were they to get 35 to 40 million, I think that's probably what you're looking at. I can see Villa quoting 40, maybe even 45, but I'm not sure he's done enough that would convince teams to go over 40 for him. He hasn't had an England international yet. But then again, Forest did pay 43 million about that for Morgan Gibbs-White. So, there's potential there for them to do it. And, if they are to lose Gibbs-White, they've lost Elanga already. Ramsey is a quite direct running player, could be good on the counter-attack. He's physical as well. So you can see where he fits in the sort of Nottingham Forest system. That said, I would still like to see Jacob Ramsey stay at Aston Villa because, and I'm sure most fans would agree, seeing one of our own is very, very special. And, I'm only saying my opinion here. It doesn't. It could be totally wrong, whatever. But I do just feel there is another level for him to get to. But then, if Villa were to make the sale, then you sort of get it as well. It's just one of them. But yes, but let's have a little look at the squad as it stands. We can see quite a few comments have come through. I will get to those in a second. Yes, so here's the squad as it currently stands. Now, take a few players out. Kost Nedeljkovic, he's gone to Leipzig. Enzo Barrenechea, Benfica. Now, if you look at the team here, where are we overly stocked? I did talk about this about a month ago, but it's worth updating. Left back, we've got Ian Maatsen, Luca Dean, Illing Jr., you could argue is a left back, but you could also say probably plays in that left midfield role where Ramsey is at most of the time. And Alex Moreno. Now, you would think Alex Moreno is probably going to move on. So I'll take him out because I think he'll probably go. Now, Illing Jr. is an interesting one. If you were to bet on it right now, what do you think would happen? Because if I were to put a bet on, I'd say he goes on loan. But I think there's a world in which Luca Dean maybe moves on. There's not any noises around that happening. I mean, I doubt anyone's going to pay him the sort of salary Villa are paying, so I don't imagine he'd be in a great rush to go. But there could be a scenario in which Villa feel they have to move his wages on. But we'll see anyway. But if I was to put a bet on, I'd say Illing Jr. goes on loan again. But I could see a world in which Emery wants to see a bit of Illing Jr. I feel like he'll probably feature a fair bit in pre-season and just get a better sense of him and see whether he could potentially be an asset at left back or in midfield. But if I had to guess, I'd say another loan might be on the cards for him. So I've taken him out. So then the left backs are Ian Maatsen and Luca Dean. Solid. I think Maatsen might be ahead of Dean now. Mings and Pau Torres, again, solid. Two contrasting players. Quite like that. Obviously, Mings has signed a new contract. As I said earlier, probably presume there was maybe a reduction in wages in that, you would assume. They go to right centre-back. You got Ezri Konsa and you've got Lamar Bogard. Villa have to sign another full centre-back. I also haven't mentioned Özcan as well, the Turkish player, 18-year-old signed from Kasımpaşa. Fantastic experience. Played a lot of games in a top league in Turkey. And he's a Turkish international already. So signed a top young talent there, one of the top young talents in Europe. But the assumption there as well is that he'd go on loan because with Mings and Pau Torres, he's not going to get a lot of game time. But Bogard and Konsa at right centre-back, Villa have to sign another right centre-back. And I think it's about time Konsa had proper competition. Konsa's been a brilliant player for Villa. But, it always helps to have players pushing for your position. Always helps to have a player just go at you and keep you on your toes, essentially. And I think that's what Konsa needs. And I'm not convinced Bogard is that player. So were you to guess what happens with Bogard? Well, he's helpful because he's a homegrown player and he would play in Europe, you would think. But we haven't seen him pretty much since he put in a very excellent display at Arsenal in the 2-2 comeback draw we had. He's a really talented young player, Bogard. He can do it in midfield. He's mainly a midfielder, but he can do it in defence as well. Bogard, as a South, pure profit, maybe for something like 12 to 13 million quid. You could see Villa's temptation to do it. But there's also a world in which maybe they just hold on to him until Villa can get another right centre-back in. But, the fact Bogard's not really played since that display back in January makes me think surely he's moving on, whether on loan or in a transfer. So I'll take him out of the team. So then you're looking at Konsa as the main right centre-back, and that's it. So Villa surely, after years of not having a proper competitor for Ezri Konsa at right centre-back, surely they're going to sort that out because that area of the pitch, right centre-back and right back, has been a real problem for Villa, I think. Not necessarily in the sense like they're poor players or anything, but I think it's been a problem in the sense of, we keep shunting centre backs out to right back. Ezri Konsa goes out there, or Axel Disasi went out there, against Man City. And Konsa's had a couple of really excellent games there, particularly against Bayern Munich with the Kingsley Coman. But Konsa never quite looks comfortable at right centre back. And what he tends to do is he drifts in. So then he leaves a big gap out on the right. And I saw his body language when he had to play against Matoma when he went to right centre back against Brighton in December. And the look on the guy's face and his body language was really like he wasn't enjoying it. So Villa have got to sort out that right centre back role and then get a competitor in for Konsa, who will be the starting right centre back. And then you go to right back and Cash and Andres Garcia. Andres Garcia, talented young guy. I think we'll see a fair bit more of him now this season, and he may even usurp Cash quite quickly this season. But Cash is a solid enough right back. He's functional. He's athletic. He's a Polish international, so he's got all that. Is he the world class fullback we'd all like to have? No. You can see why Unai always plays him, because it's just kind of functionally dependable. But getting into that final third is always, he cuts back. It's never been his natural game. Maybe he's told to do it by Unai, but it is what it is. Andres Garcia, I think, when he gets into that final third, has shown in games towards the end of the season, or when after he came in January, he showed in games when he got into that final third, he looked a bit more progressive than Cash. But that area, if we could get if we could get a right back in and a right centre back, very happy with that. But not convinced it's going to happen with the right backs. I think that might be what it is, Cash and Garcia. But Konsa, there has to be another right centre back coming in, surely. Now we go to centre midfield. John McGinn, Yuri Tielemans, Ross Barkley, Boubacar Kamara, Amadou Onana. That is a really solid midfield. There's very few midfielders in the Premier League that can compete with that. Most managers in the Premier League would be envious of that. So you very much doubt we're going to be bringing anyone in to centre midfield, you would think. Can't see it. So, yeah, that's what it is. I think there's a slight risk if Tielemans gets a long-term injury. I'm not sure I feel comfortable relying on Barkley long-term, but it is what it is. Hopefully this season, Kamara, Onana, Tielemans, McGinn and Barkley can all avoid long-term injuries, please. And if they do, then, that centre midfield area is very strong. Then we go into the attacking areas, and it's looking like Jacob Ramsey and arguably Ealing Jr. as those left midfield roles. If Jacob Ramsey were to go to Forest, you've got, Rodgers plays there now. Is that what you would do? To bring him back into the central area. I think Rodgers does play very well in that left area. I really like him. But for now, it's Ramsey. Obviously, we've lost Rashford. You'd think Villa are going to have to make a signing there as well. You just do. It's just so light. So light. So yeah, that left midfield area there has to be something coming in there, and the same goes for right midfield, because Leon Bailey, I think he's off. He's been linked to Fenerbahce alone where they'd have to buy him a year later. That has been talked about in the Turkish press. Fenerbahce seems to be becoming Aston Villa on the Bosphorus with Asensio's gone there, Duran's gone there, Diego Carlos is there, maybe Leon Bailey will be going there. So, maybe we'll see them in Europe one day. But I think Bailey's likely gone. I think his race is run at Villa. So then you're left with Rodgers as the kind of only person who can go on right midfield, and Daniel Marlin as well, you could argue. So Marlin and Rodgers, and then up front you've got Marlin and Watkins as the two strikers. I think that will probably stay the same unless Villa get a big bid for Watkins and think that these wages have to be dealt with, and then they have quite a lot of funds to then go hard for I don't know, that Porto striker, Marodian, I think. I can't remember what his name is now, but he looks the part, doesn't he? But if you were to put a bet on it, Marlon and Watkins probably are going to be our two options up top. So then, up top, in that final third, it looks very light if Bailey goes. Ramsey, Rodgers, Marlon and Watkins really is it. Maybe they look to promote a youth player and maybe a Caden Young. But Villa are surely going to be making signings in that area. Now, I talked about that with Adam from the London Lions, our sort of transfer scouting guru, who came up with a couple of links. Evan Guessand at Nice was one that could potentially come in. And you'd think Villa would be looking in the sort of 20 to 30 million mark, or maybe just over 30 for somebody to come into that sort of area. Also, with Rodgers, there is that Chelsea link. Which Chelsea do want Rodgers. That is true. To get Rodgers, you would think they'd have to pay 80 to 90 million. And Chelsea, they don't need him now. But, with the sheer volume of games they've got coming up this season, they don't seem shy in signing players. They don't seem shy in expanding their squad. And they're probably going to sell one or two. Maybe Nkunku will go, maybe Nicholas Jackson. And I've always said, haven't I, that Rodgers could be the heir to Watkins. He could be a striker. So the Chelsea links are real. But I think Rodgers will stay for another year, if I was to put it. I think he's the player that I could see Unai most putting his foot down and saying he ain't going. So hopefully that is not a move that happens. I don't think it will. I think if it was, I feel like Chelsea would have probably put that bid in now. By now, but you never know. I mean, Grealish was late, and it was sort of late July, wasn't it? That was like July 31st, I think that bid went in. So yeah, it can drag on a bit, but I think Rodgers hopefully sticking around at Villa. But yeah, now the players linked to us. Harvey Elliott is a name that's come up. He could come in and be a versatile player who plays in that Asensio role off an Ollie Watkins, sort of in that central area where Asensio was. I could see our Harvey Elliott happening. That is one I could really imagine. Other players, the Villa surely going to have to get a winger in to come in on the right in a sort of Bailey role, and then on the left as well, somebody could come in there and be a competitor for Jacob Ramsey. So it really does look like Villa still have quite a lot of work to do to sort this squad out. I haven't even mentioned goalkeeper, and were Martinez to go, you're looking at Bezo, who's come in from Brest. Couple of really good Champions League performances last year for Brest. Good player. So if Martinez were to go, is there a world in which he'd be our number one for a year? Well, it's not impossible. I'm hoping he's the Robin Olsen replacement, which if it is, then we've definitely upgraded in our goalkeeper department. But yeah, keep an eye on that. We'll see. I've been linked with Lucas Chevalier at Lille. Probably a fair few keepers will pop up if Martinez is to eventually leave. So there's probably a lot of people really not enjoying listening to this, me talking about players leaving Aston Villa. People don't want to hear it. I mean, that's fine. I get that. It's more exciting when we know about players coming in. And I do think that's what's going to happen. I think towards the end of July, it's going to pick up. And I think Villa will start to make a few signings. But it is also hard to shake the feeling. It's a little bit like Newcastle last summer, where they didn't really make many signings. What did they do? Well, I got Champions League. But looking at Villa's squad, particularly in that final third and at the right centre-back area, Villa have got to get players in. I have to. 3 at a minimum, I would say. Could there be a loan in the offing eventually? Could Grealish maybe come in on loan? Don't know. Just got a feeling he's going to end up somewhere like Sunderland. Like, it's just those wages. I mean, who wants to pay those wages? Really? Yeah, I just don't know with him. Alone, mate. Garnacho is another one mentioned. It makes sense. It does if in that left midfield area and maybe as a right midfielder. Harvey Elliott makes sense. And were Villa to get Elliott and Garnacho and another player who can't really foresee quite one that comes in, so it gets a bit exciting then, doesn't it? So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Anyway, I'll get to the comments. Black Country Villain, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you as well, mate. Always good to see you here. Dennis Farrell, hi Frankie, the world's best Villa podcaster, the world's number one, the Emi Martinez. Is that what I am? Is it? Well, thank you very much. Very kind to say. I'm not sure I'm the best, but there's a lot of top Villa podcasters out there. A lot of rumours of outgoings, incomings. Martinez and Bailey are two definite out, in my opinion. I thought Dean was the highest paid. I'm just being can't read that. But yeah, Martinez and Bailey. Yes, if I were to bet on it, Bailey to Fenerbahce and Martinez to somewhere probably. But hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully Martinez stays. I'm not saying I've got any intel that I know it's happening or anything like that. Peter Smith, if RB Leipzig want him, he must be quite good. They have a lot of quality. I'd like us to buy it. That's in reference to Kostin Darkovic. Yes, of course. And if he supplanted Lucro Hatroida, a Dutch international from right back, who Leipzig signed for a decent amount of money last summer, he's got to be a serious talent. He does. Got my Aston Villa cup here for my tea. Good cup of tea, that. Right. Shadrach Jazzy. I think that's a Man United logo there. Man United fans tuning in. Are we getting Mbeumo? How close are we? I don't know. I have no intel on Manchester United, but that Mbeumo thing's gone very quiet. But I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to end up at Man United. I just think there's lots of brinksmanship going on. But then also, Johan Wissa, is he going to Newcastle? That link's picked up today. And if Wissa goes, maybe Brentford hold on to Mbeumo. Kevin Jeans, apparently Man United's total revenue a year ago was £667 million. If we assume we've made about 370-80 million, that's in reference to this season of the Champions League. Obviously, we need a 300 million jump to match. So we just need to get super creative. Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that the revenues since we came back to the Premier League have been on a gradual upturn. Yes, without Champions League, it's probably going to have a little bit of a dip now this season. You never know, it might not, but you would assume it would. But the overall, if you were to do like in finance a logarithmic progression, if you were to look at where Villa are going, you would say that over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, the revenues will continue to go up. And hopefully then we'll get into that kind of top 15 bracket on the Deloitte League. And that therefore will mean we are more capable of holding on to our best players and paying them the kind of money that they want or would get at somewhere like Chelsea. Man United fans getting overexcited saying they can get Martinez for less than 20 million. Yep, exactly. Matt Mayer has put that rumour that came out of the Argentinian media overnight, put that to bed. So well done, Matt Mayer. Thank you for that. Kevin Jeans, I believe these Argentinians were a tad wider than Marcus regards Martinez. Yeah, 21 million didn't sound right at all, did it? Just can't see that. Just right, loving the long sleeve home kit. Yes, the home kit was revealed. Little bit quietly done. Just posted there on Instagram. Bit random. I thought it'd be a bit more. Last year we had the Ozzy Osbourne reveal, which was probably the best kit reveal I've ever seen in my life at any club ever. Yeah, a bit random the way they just put it out on Tuesday night, but yeah, very nice. I love the long sleeve. I love the gold trim. Yeah, nice shirt and nice celebration of the whole end and Villa Park itself, and good to see the long sleeve back. I always loved playing. Whenever I played Sunday League as a kid, I used to love the long sleeve shirts. Yeah, I just don't know, just liked it. Melty shirts. Good to see you again, Melty. Still feels like we're gonna have to sell someone we really don't want to in order to properly strengthen. I keep flip flopping on who it should be. Emi, Ramsey, Ollie. Yes, you're exactly right. It does feel like that, and I think it is like that. Ramsey, you'd think Ramsey's not on the massive wages, so there's not a great argument to say to sell him, really. Martinez and Ollie are the two that, Ollie will be turning 30 this season. Peak value. I actually think Ollie's on course maybe for a bounce back season where, his numbers were still excellent last year, but he struggled, I think, not having a proper preseason. So I think this year with a proper preseason, a proper holiday off football, he could have a real big season this year for Villa again. Maybe a bit closer to what it was 2 years ago when he fired us to the Champions League. He should keep, if he stays at Villa, he should push towards, he should look at that 100 goal mark. I think that's what I want to get to. Now, Emi and Ollie, though, do seem the most logical, don't they? Rodgers won't be on the biggest wages either. So selling Rodgers and Ramsey does feel a bit random, unless it's just a crazy bid from Chelsea that in football it just ends up being too good to turn down. But like I say, hopefully that doesn't happen. Kevin Jean's now swapping Martinez for Garnacho. I'm up for that. Yeah, I mean, if Martinez were to go, obviously it's a massive, massive loss for Villa because he's an absolutely brilliant goalkeeper. And it's a big game for Man United because their keeper situation hasn't been great for a fair few years. But you can see why it would have to happen because we probably can't pay what Martinez deserves, really. And then for Garnacho to come in, I've seen a lot of negativity about that. I think the same as Rashford. I think Unai Emery is a great kind of personality. He's a great sort of like man manager. It feels like he's always had a tendency to get the best out of so many players. And I feel like a year liberated from the sort of goldfish bowl graveyard that is Man United right now. Garnacho might just come in and show what he's about, or show what level he could reach. I think I do think Garnacho's got a high level. I do think he's got a high ceiling. But we'll see. Chelsea been linked with him as well, and maybe they'll just come in with a big old bid for him, and that'll be that. Mel Shirts would have thought there might be more interest in Moreno, Castine, Buendia, but maybe I'm being impatient. Yeah, I didn't even mention Buendia, did I? He's in the squad list. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. God, I'm just a bit of a forgotten man, certainly for me. I mean, look, if Buendia stays, I guess he'd go in that kind of Asensio role, wouldn't he? But it just doesn't ever feel like he's quite lived up to it at Villa, and it feels like Villa have maybe moved past him now. And I think there would be interest in him, promoted clubs, particularly like Leeds, Daniel Farke's worked with him before at Norwich. Sunderland are spending big, there's a lot of teams out there who might want a creative, proven a Premier League player who's been at Bayer Leverkusen as well, proven creative player, proven at the top level. A lot of teams who might want that. So, yeah, I'm a little surprised I've not heard a bit more around Buendia potentially going. Dean, Cash, Moreno. Yeah, Moreno, I think, will probably go quietly to Spain if he goes, or maybe might even go on loan again. But then, Dean, it's just that salary. I don't think anyone's going to want to pay that. So I think it's going to be hard to shift him unless he's willing to take a pay cut and go somewhere. He's got a year left on his deal, so maybe he sees that out and just goes on a free next season. Cash, there would be interesting Cash. It would be. There'd be teams particularly teams who've come up into the Premier League, maybe like mid-level Premier League clubs would be interesting. I think there's teams in Europe who'd be interesting Cash. But I think he's staying. Darren C, would you sell Rodgers to Chelsea for 80 million plus, Frankie? No, I'd hold on to Rodgers. I really would. I'd hold on to him. I just think he's such a brilliant player. He's a game changer. He's shown he can do it at the Champions League level. Really crucial player for Villa. Do I think there's certain flaws in him? Yes. I think when him and Ollie Watkins play centrally together, I don't think they always work very well together, because I think when they have games where Watkins doesn't hold the ball up brilliantly, and he does have games like that, and Rodgers is making those sort of ambitious passes which don't come off, suddenly what tends to happen then, not all the time, but sometimes with the two of them, the ball will go forward and it bounces straight back off them. And I can't tell you enough when you're playing football, as anyone who's played at any level of the game ever will know, if you get that ball forward and the striker and the attacking midfielders don't hold on to it and retain it, and the ball just keeps coming back at you, it is absolutely bloody exhausting. And a game where that happened was Chelsea last season away, where we lost 3-0. So I think were Rodgers to play centrally and have a striker like Mateta next to him, who holds the ball up more often than not, that to me feels like a better combination. Again, there's probably people screaming at me or whatever about it. Again, I can only say what I think, and fair enough if people disagree. But yeah, I think Rodgers is too important, and to Villa, if he's to go central, I'd like to see a bit of an improvement in his ball retention, because there were times last season where the ball really was coming off him a lot, and it was coming back at Villa all the time. And I think that when he moved out right, in a sense, he went into the centre. It might not be a coincidence that Villa's form did pick up. It might not be the sole reason it did. It certainly isn't, but it might have helped. And when I've seen Rodgers at Villa, I think his best role has been left centre, in the centre, but on the left where Ramsey tends to play. That's where I really like seeing Rodgers. Maybe he goes there this season. We'll see. What I'd like Villa to do is get a proper winger in to play on the right. We saw the difference he made when Bailey came on against Palace at Wembley. That was finally when Villa looked quite threatening. Just right. If Moreno hangs around, he can fill in on the right, according to FM24. Okay. Don't know if I've ever seen him on the right, but fair enough. Darren C. Moreno is done. Legs are gone. I mean, Forest fans liked him, but then he sort of got edged out the team, didn't he? He sort of lost his place. So, you think it's probably time for him to move on now, particularly when Villa are so stopped at left back. Thing is with Moreno, never underestimate. He was a brilliant signing for us. 14 million quid about that, and he was a transformational player down that left-hand side. Him, Mings, Ramsey, Watkins, down that left from Villa. When United joined Aston Villa, Moreno was the catalyst for Villa's transformation and to fire us into the Conference League in Europe. And I think Moreno, were he to leave, would leave as a brilliant signing and a player who did a brilliant job at Aston Villa. I'd really, really love to see him back, at the club, walking around and saying hi. Just right, Bailey will go. Hopefully nothing ruins the game like the words Bailey warming up. There's a lot of beeping going on outside. Maybe people getting annoyed at me for anything I've said on this podcast. Maybe Villa fans have hunted me down. Hopefully not. Just try to be fair-minded. We all love the Villa, don't we? We all want to see his best for him. It's funny with Bailey. He's had 4 seasons at Villa. 1 dreadful season last season. A stop-start season when he came in first time. Average season his second season, and an absolutely exhilarating season where he was the most electrifying footballer in sports entertainment today in his 3rd season. He was one of the best football players in the world in attacking positions. A phenomenal season. It really was. Maybe it had something to do with Diaby being there. Maybe there's a mentality thing with him where if he gets a goal early on in the season, it can transform how his entire season goes. And let's say if he'd scored against West Ham last season on the opening day when he hit the post, who knows? Maybe he would have had a much better season than he did. But last season, he was dreadful. And it's probably time. His race is probably run. Martin McKeever, caught a live stream. Hello from New Zealand via Ireland. Hello there, Martin. Good to see you. I'll try and do a Kiwi accent, bro. Shut, bro. I know a fair few Kiwis that I work with. We get a few listeners from New Zealand as well. Hello to all of them. Please drop us an email, say hi, why you Villa fans and why you listen to us, and all Villa no filler at gmail.com. It'd be great to hear from you. Genuinely, I'd love fans all over the world. I'd love to hear from you and just what you like about the podcast, what you change, why you support Villa, or how you got into it. All that is fascinating, really. And then I'd love to read out those stories on the podcast itself. But yeah, good to see you, Martin. Thanks for joining me. Just right. Marlon is going to have a good season, I think. I agree. And I think we've all forgot, we've all kind of, it's gone out of our head that Marlon is a very new signing. He's essentially like a player we could have signed this summer and we'd all be buzzing, right? Instead, we signed him back in January. So we kind of overlooked it. But he scored some crucial goals and some of his performances were fantastic. I know he didn't play loads, but Unai Emery does tend to be quite cautious at bringing players into the team. And I think this season is going to be big for Marlon. I agree with you, mate. I think he's going to be the backup striker. I think he's going to start a few games up front. I think he's going to start a fair few games out right. I think he's a player who probably is at his best as an impact player. That's what football is now. Big squads, players who play 60 minutes, 65 minutes, players who play 35 minutes, 30 minutes. They're called finishers now. And so there'll be games where Marlon starts like he did against Forest and scored. Then plays 60 minutes, comes off. And then there'll be games where he comes on like he did against Brighton and scores the last goal. He's a super squad player to have there who can do a whole variety of roles in the attacking third, mainly striker out on the right. I'm very excited to see what Marlon does this season. And my bet, if I was to do an outside bet and go and put 20 quid on down the bookies, not that I'm encouraging anyone to do betting, because, but if I was to put 20 quid on, I'd say Marlon gets more than 10 Premier League goals this season. That's going to be my little bet. I think he's going to score a fair few goals. I think he will. Any legs on the Garnacho rumour? It's just a rumour. So no intel on that whatsoever. But if you think about it, it does make sense. The one I think really does have legs is Harvey Elliott at Liverpool. I saw some gambling odds for him moving to Villa plummeted a few days ago. That could be a sign that there's something going on, some talks of some kind, and Harvey Elliott would come in essentially as the Asensio replacement. And Elliott is a brilliant young player. He's a brilliant young player. There's been games I've watched for Liverpool where the opposition could really handle him, but it's just difficult for him to get the game time he needs in the Liverpool team. So, look, I think Aston Villa would be a great team for him to go to. I really do, and I think he'd have a great time at Villa. I think he'd be a real star for us, and I think Elliott would be a big player for Villa if he came in, and I'd be very excited if that would happen. Very. Rodgers isn't effective from the right. Need both new RW and LW, says Steve B. Yeah, I mean, he has been effective in some games, I think. The assist against Bournemouth, for instance. But yes, he doesn't like glide past players in the way he does when he's more central, which is why I think centre left is currently where I like him. I think if we had a striker next to him, we held the ball up much more consistently than Watkins does, well, then I'd feel a bit more. I'd feel like, right, Rodgers central then works better. Lots of different reasons for it, but I think Rodgers, centrally, yes, he is better there, and hopefully we'll see him there more this season. But Villa need a right winger. Absolutely need a right winger. Just right. We're not going to lose Rodgers. Europa League isn't attracting anyone in our price range to replace him. Oh, absolutely, yeah. I'd just be cautious if if Rodgers were to go, if Chelsea were to bid 80 to 90 million quid for him and Villa said yes, Villa then would probably bid for Nicholas Jackson. Nicholas Jackson can play as a right winger. He can also play up front. I think if Jackson were to come to Villa, we go on the right. But it could also mean Ollie Watkins moves on and then Jackson becomes our striker. And then I would say Villa would definitely buy a Harvey Elliott or something like that. Ideally, we don't lose Rodgers, but look, if Chelsea make that massive bid, we have to wait and see. I take Elliott. Yeah, same as me. I wouldn't sell Rodgers. Same. I wouldn't sell him, Steve. Just right. I can see us losing Emi now. Yeah, I agree. I think so. Kevin Jeans is 50-50. Martinez goes. Yeah, I mean, look, Villa did show him in all the pictures recently. Doesn't mean much. Don't think he was in the kit launch pictures, so read into that what you will. I think he's going. I just think he's going. That's unfortunately just what I think. Doubt Grealish will come in, says just right. Yeah. Grealish, The injuries aren't great. His performances haven't been brilliant. He's on absolutely astronomical wages. I don't think he's going to find a Champions League level football club. I can't see it. So, yeah. Sunderland. I genuinely could see him going to somewhere like that. Like, I don't know, maybe he ends up at Tottenham. Who knows? But Forest to be a good shout. I could see him going there. Only on loan though. Kevin Hughes, I feel Emi is waiting for Chelsea to make a bid. Yeah, they have a lot of faith in Sanchez, and he had a really good Club World Cup. He was fantastic in the final against PSG by all accounts. Steve B, I think Martinez wants to go. Yeah. The tears at the end of the season would suggest that a move is on. I love the guy. I do. I love Martinez. I really would love him to stay, but it is what it is. Nicholas Jackson seems to be picking up in the rumour mill. Yeah, maybe there's been more noise while I've been recording as well. But yeah, I do think Jackson would make a lot of sense. Who knows? Worked with him before at Villarreal. So yeah, I could see that. Who else is there? I think we'll aim for a decent loan attacker and then go for someone with big money in the winter window. Yeah, I think we'll go for a loan. I agree. It makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot of loans waiting to happen late in this window. Grealish being one, a couple of Chelsea players like Nkunku could be one, maybe Jackson himself. Garnacho looks like one. Rashford's another one. These are all big players, big loans waiting to happen. Yeah, and I think Villa most likely will be a team that are going to explore that. Kevin Hughes, big question. Why would Martinez even contemplate a move to United? Money, it definitely isn't to win things despite their occasional triumphs. There's something about Man United that seems to just have pull no matter what. They just can pay wages that other clubs can't because of their revenues. So that is a big factor. But also, I'm not sure I buy this theory. I hear from a lot of podcasters that, Manchester United are Manchester United. So a lot of players have this kind of mythology of them and have dreamt of playing for them. I know Mateus Cunha said that, but growing up, Man United never did anything for me. Never did anything for me. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Juventus, the European clubs are the ones that I looked at and thought, can you imagine you're a footballer and you could play for them? It'd be unbelievable, wouldn't it? Obviously, I would never ask for a transfer from Aston Villa, of course, ever. But Man United, maybe there are just players that you have to pull, and you have to remember as well, they've gone through their darkest spell since the 1970s in the last kind of 7 to 8 years. They've won a Europa League. They've been to a Europa League final. They've just been to they've lost 2 Europa League finals. They've won 1 Europa League. They've won the FA Cup twice. Won the Carabao Cup a year ago. I mean, even under Ten Hag, they won 2 trophies. Under Amorim, where they've been absolutely garbage, they've got to a final of the Europa League. And if Villa got to the Europa League final, we'd all be bloody end of the world. Wouldn't it be unbelievable? That's so joyous. So United just does have even at their lowest ebb, has a knack of just being a club that has the aura to get far. This is something Villa desperately need to find as a football club. Absolutely need to find it. But money is a big factor, of course, for Martinez going to United. He's on his last contract now, probably his last big contract. And maybe looks at United and thinks maybe it's more likely they win something there than he does at Villa, which is, I don't think is necessarily true. I do think Villa are on course for a trophy in the coming years. But look, I'm not in Martinez's head, so I don't know really. But just trying to think of why players might be drawn to Man United. Recent trophy-winning escapades. Why is Brian Mbeumo chosen United over Newcastle? Probably wages. Why is Cunha chosen United? Maybe over other clubs that were in for him. The wages, and it's Man United. So annoying. Just right, I agree. Emery is a great manager that can get the best out of players, but look at the trouble with Duran. Garnacho could be Duran 2.0 for the petulance department. Yeah, I think Duran was a very unique case. I think Duran's a very unique personality. I don't, I don't think Duran was like a bad person or anything like that, but he's just clearly an intriguing character who has his own unique approach to life and is someone that, you know, I think we have to have sympathy for, you know, what his background is, coming from a very poor background in Colombia, and then, you know, at a very young age, everyone's telling you you're the best footballer in the world, and agents come to you and they're negotiating for you, and suddenly you're taken off to the US, playing Chicago, then you're taken off to Birmingham, probably never heard of it at that point, to play for a team called Aston Villa in the Premier League. You got to have some sympathy there with him, and it's a lot to take on board when you're that young. But interesting personality, Duran. I don't think Garnacho's Duran. I don't think Garnacho's going to be, you know, getting in trouble with landlords or anything like that. But and I think if he came to Villa, my hunch is that Garnacho would knuckle down and would probably do all right. That'd be my hunch. If he wasn't, prepared to say I was wrong. Steve B, do you think we'll go back in for Felix? God, I hope not. God, I hope not. I think he's just a dreadful decision maker. Dreadful decision maker. Every single time he's had the opportunity to make the right choice with regards to clubs he should join, he makes the wrong one. Last year, Aston Villa absolutely were in for him. Aston Villa was definitely an option. He would have been the main player for us. I think that Emery would have seen as the attacking fulcrum, and instead he went and bloody blew it. Joining Chelsea was a disaster of a decision, which was obviously going to be the case. Then he goes on loan to AC Milan. Shambolic career choices. He's very talented, he is, but he's not consistent. So he's not proven enough in his career that he belongs truly to play for teams like Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Chelsea. He's not shown it. And the wages he would be on are astronomical, I would imagine. So I sincerely hope that Aston Villa, having given this guy pretty much 2 chances to come and join us, just decide, do you know what? Nah. And I think there's a case that he's overrated. I think there's very few overrated footballers in professional football. You generally are at the level you deserve. But I do think Felix his hype maybe got ahead of him when he was very young. And as a result, he's managed to be at all these top clubs and he's just never really done it. Mark Huggins, great to see you, mate. Great to see you, mate. Always, Mark Huggins is one of the best Villa fans you'll ever meet. Lovely, lovely person. We raised over $2,000 for charity with Chad from Villa Forever podcast. That was all Michael and Chad's big idea that we did at the Aston Social at the end of the season. Fantastic to meet you in person, Mike. It really was. And thanks so much for all the support you always give to this channel. How can we compete if our hands are tied? Mate, I did a whole big piece that I wrote for allvillanovilla.com about PSR and the ridiculous system we're in. Villa's hands are tied. And it's funny, like living down here in London, I obviously know a lot of Arsenal fans and Tottenham fans. They never, ever seem to grasp what I'm talking about with regards to all this. I'm always like, but like, Villa have to sell because they can't quite grasp it. Because I'm like, well, PSR, the way it's fixed is that it just does benefit the top 6 clubs. It just does. And like, it just doesn't, it just seems to sort of go over the heads a little bit. Like, can't really grasp or understand the situation Villa are in. And Newcastle are in as well, to be honest. So, yeah, it's shocking. I went over the piece of nuances of PSR and why it's, I think it's a necessary evil to stop the Saudi Arabians, but the way to stop it would have been to stop nation states owning football clubs. Because as I've said before, if Newcastle's takeover, they would have, if there's no financial restrictions, they would have done what Manchester City did, which when they had their takeover, and Manchester City targeted Aston Villa and Everton, they bought Gareth Barry, they bought James Milner, they bought Joleon Lescott from Everton. But all these players hit those teams out of the centre area of the Premier League, moved up, then they targeted Arsenal and they targeted Barcelona to get into that top. They attacked those teams. PSG attacked Barcelona when they had their Qatari takeover. And you would have the same thing. If Newcastle had no financial restrictions, They would have come in and they would have looked at Aston Villa as their main rival for where they were at the time and gone, we're going to bid 100 million quid for Ollie Watkins right now, and we're going to pay him 400 grand a week. Because what they would have done is what Man City did, raise the wage barrier to such a level that hardly anybody can compete with them. And it would have just left Aston Villa completely by the way. So something had to be done to stop that. Something should have been done to stop nation-state ownership in football. But with PSR, Villa's hands are tied, and there surely has to be some kind of revolution within it. But then I say all that, PSR's going. This is the last season of it. Apparently, they might stretch it out again, knowing how bloody Premier League works. But SCR is what's going to be coming in, and that is why Villa have to sell either Watkins or Emi Martinez, I think, because they are probably our biggest paid players, and Martinez is probably our top paid player. So it's extremely difficult when our hands are tied, and but you got to keep the faith and think, you know what, we're a brilliant football team, and we will keep competing in and around the European places. And who knows, we might even win the Europa League this season. We might do it. Dennis Farrell, is Tonev Villa's worst ever signing? Oh, there's a fair few of them. Mustafa Salafu, he wasn't great, was he? Bosco Balaban, 6 million, the hype he was when he came in. God, there's a fair few. There's a few of them in that sort of the final seat, the relegation year. Jemba. That could be another one. See, Darren, he said Jemba. Yeah, great minds, right? Been a fair few, yeah. Kevin Hunter, great to meet you, mate. Met you at the Aston Social. I think it was after the Celtic game, maybe. I think you'd flown in from Florida. Kevin, absolutely amazing to see you on here. I don't think I've seen you on here before. Good show as always, mate. USA tour next weekend. Jump on a flight over. Yeah, I'd love to.
Folks, if Donald Trump would allow me to go in, maybe he wouldn't allow me into the United States. He doesn't like Aston Villa fans, folks, I tell you.
But yeah, that'd be great fun. I'd love to go over to the US for a tour. Nashville, I think we're in, aren't we? And I thought it was a city. My bucket list, always wanted to go there. But yeah, finances won't allow me to, but definitely one of these days I will get to one of them pre-season tours. Kevin, thank you so much, and please do let me know when you're coming back over for a Villa game. It'd be great to catch up with you up at the mighty Villa. Just right, joining Man U in 2025 is like trying to sleep with Katie Price because of the Jordan days. Well, okay, I can't comment. I can't comment. Jim Quartermain, I feel we have had our moment and will now see us slip back into mid-table mediocrity. I hope I'm wrong, but just my gut feeling telling me. I can understand why you feel like that, Jim. I understand some of the sort of frustrations about this window, the sort of nagging feeling of like not turning up at Old Trafford at the end of the season really, really could be costly. Emery's like total crestfallen body language at the end of that game made me feel like, whoa, this isn't good. But Aston Villa, let's not forget, still have a really, really strong team. And you'd think we're going to make a couple of signings who might not be like 50, 60 million pound players, but they might be the type of players who'd come in and out of nowhere, like Morgan Rogers did, turn out to be stars. I think where I'd be positive with Villa is that we are a team that is properly run now with very, very ambitious owners. Yes, it's very difficult to compete. Yes, the so-called Big Six have made that harder. Financial restrictions make it really hard. But I think that, scouting department is, elite. Monchi and the extent of that scouting department, it has to be really, really strong. And Monchi's one of the, most successful operators in European football for the last 25 years. So, you have to look at it positively like that. We've got one of the best managers in world football in Unai Emery. And we've kind of built the club around him, in essence. We've got two owners who are extremely ambitious. haven't really made too many mistakes since joining Villa. We've got, we've got this guy from Juventus. So, revenues wise, Villa have a really strong team. We brought in Adrian Philby as well from Celtic. Various people on that financial revenue side are serious operators. They are. And you would like to think that they are going to improve those revenues as well over time. Yes, there's going to be seasons where the so-called Big Six are going to have, and it looks like it's happening this summer, are going to have bought players that just make them super, super strong, right? Tottenham look like they're coming back this season, right? United look like they might be coming back. But football, it doesn't go in typical, upward trajectory all the time. It doesn't follow a consistent pattern all the time. It's up and down. And who would have known that United and Tottenham would be in the bottom bloody 5 last season? United and Tottenham maybe won't bounce back at all. Maybe they won't. And, Newcastle, I think the Champions League, with the style of football they have, they play, it's going to be really difficult for them. So there's still opportunities for Villa to get back into that Champions League contention. And I theorise actually maybe the easier way to do it is to win the Europa League. Because, that top 4 is going to be very strong this season. City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. Who's getting past that? But you never know. Like I say, maybe the game volume hits Chelsea. Maybe Arsenal, their attacking signings don't really work and they fall off. Maybe they don't replace Partey properly. Maybe Eze doesn't come in. But, we'll see. I think, regardless of what happens in the coming season, the way I look at it over the next 5 years for Villa is I'm very positive, and I think the good times are here. Multi-shirts, Felix to Villa is need Benny McCarthy to Villa. God, do you remember that? Never ended. Like Benny McCarthy's coming to Villa, and then he'd play us in the Intertoto Cup and score for Celta Vigo. And then Benny McCarthy's coming to Villa, and then the next year, oh, look, it's Benny McCarthy again playing for Celta Vigo. And he's now at Blackburn. Okay. Bongo. I agree, no to Felix. Yes to Elliott and Grealish on loan. I'd be yes to Elliott. I'd be no to Felix. And I would be no to Grealish. I think Grealish would come in and do well, actually. I think there's a world in which he'd come in and actually have a great time of it. And it's very tempting. It's very romantic, isn't it, to think of him and, as a homegrown, and he's a homegrown player as well, so that would help in Europe. But I think I veer towards no. I think I veer towards no on Grealish. But I did an episode a few weeks ago on it. Him in that central area or on the left could work. It could. Were he to come in as a squad player, yeah, it's all right. But massive wages. Villa would have to pay a hefty chunk of it. Very on the fence about it. I lean towards no. But if it were to happen, could work. Jemba says Darren, so yeah, we're signing it. Yeah, absolutely. And good shit. I think that's all the comments. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Probably not the most joyous episode I've ever done. But yes, everything is leaning towards Martinez leaving. And that's just a fact of life sometimes. Players leave. They just do. And, you'd have thought with Grealish, when he left, it was like the end of the world, wasn't it? 3 years later, we're in the Champions League. We use that money to reinvest and just get better. And that's the way it always is for Villa. If we can sell players for good fees, you can go out there and maybe find these talents that get you to an even higher level than you were before. Maybe. I'm positive. I think we've got a great team at Villa behind the scenes who are going to, if we have to get the players in that we need, they'll do it. Believe in them, I think. So, yeah, I am actually positive. I'm just, giving a rational argument as to why I think Martinez is going, and I think there could be a case that if Watkins might go as well, but I lean towards thinking he'll stay, but we'll see. Anyway, let me know what you think. Please like and please subscribe If you can subscribe, I cannot tell you enough how helpful that is. Just subscribe. Click that button on YouTube. Just click it. Go on, click that button, and get all your friends and family to do it as well, because just help us grow. It'd just be nice to keep on doing this, and audio as well. 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify help us massively. I cannot express enough how much they help. So anyway, thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed doing this, and until next time, I will be back soon.